let's talk about sampling bias. So what is bias? Bias is when we are favoring a certain side, and when we're talking about sampling bias, we're talking about favoring certain outcomes. Okay, so let's just think about this. Bias leads to unreliable sample results. That means we can't use them if any of these things happen, and it's not going to allow us to make an accurate decision. Here is something that you need to understand right here. It cannot be corrected by adding more responses to the same sample, okay? That is one thing right now. So let's just say you take a bad sample and there's bias in it, right? And then you're like, oh, well, I could just fix this by asking more people randomly and, like, fix it, right? No, you can't fix it. Think about this as, like, some sort of stew or something like that. Like, you're making a soup. You have all these ingredients in there, and as soon as you add sampling bias, it's like putting, like, I don't know, something disgusting in your soup, like mixing in way, way, way too much salt. Like, you can't take that out. Adding more stuff to that will do nothing. You know, like, that just doesn't do it. It's just bad at that point. So let's talk about, there's two types of bias. The first one we're going to talk about is called response bias. So response bias is caused by how people respond. And I'm sure you're guilty in doing this at some point, and we'll talk about this. So this is how people respond. So this is because the individuals are not truthful, or just accurate. They're just not accurate. Okay? And let's talk a little bit more about this. So they can be caused by a couple of different things. So I want to talk about these. First one is they can be caused by the person that's responding. So let's say you are taking the tobacco survey here at school, and you decide to lie because, you know, I'm your teacher and you don't want me to, like, look at these results and see, like, you know, all the bad stuff you're doing, because you're not supposed to do that. So maybe you will just decide to lie. You're lying about your usage, okay? Or maybe you just have poor memory. So maybe I asked you to recall something, like my grandma. I might ask her to tell me a story or something, and she just doesn't remember. Maybe you just don't remember and you just make up something. Okay, so those are caused by the respondent. The other problem is that this can be caused by the interviewer. So the presence of the interviewer can mess you up. Presence. I think that's spelled wrong. It's okay. The appearance. The actions of your interviewer can stress you out. The attitude of them can change how you respond. And these can all change or suggest certain answers. Can all suggest favorable answers. Okay, so let's just say this for a second. So let's say that you go into a doctor's office, and yeah, and they're asking you, like, is there any chance that you're pregnant? Like, I don't know, maybe that's a terrible example. Oh my bad. Okay, maybe you go somewhere and they're like, hey, I don't know, like the appearance of them scares you or something like that. You know, like, you're just a little bit turned off by how they are. Or maybe their attitude just, maybe you walk in and they're really mean and you're scared of them. Or maybe they're overly comfortable and you, like, share too much information. I don't know, but certain things about certain people, like doctors, it's shown that when they go get their blood, people go and get their blood pressure taken, it, like, automatically rises because they're, like, stressed out about, one, the doctor being there, and two, just the presence of them freaks you out, okay? So that is caused by the interviewer. Oh gosh. Okay, let's look at this one. Another problem that can have response bias is, oh my gosh, okay, is confusing questions. So if I talk about this one, sometimes the questions just don't make sense, and so you respond weird because you don't even know what it's saying. So maybe it's just the way it's worded, and you'll get this a lot on the phone. Like, if you have telemarketers call you and they're asking you who you're gonna vote for, they might, like, say certain questions that would lead you to respond certain ways. Like, obviously you're not gonna, like, respond to certain controversial questions if they're worded a certain way, because you would be led to answer it one way. Otherwise you'd seem like a terrible person, you know? Okay. Leading questions, you see that a lot on TV. People try to like frame you into answering a certain way. Okay, the other one is selection bias. So the first one is caused by how people respond. This one is not caused by how, but it's caused by who is in the sample. And this is primarily the problem when our samples are not representative of our population. So there are 3 types of selection bias. Let's look at these 3 types. First one is called undercoverage. Undercoverage means we on accident leave out a whole group of people. So this is just saying I am systematically leaving people out. I spelled that wrong. Whatever. Left out. You are systematically leaving people out of what you are doing, and therefore your coverage is not good. You're not getting a full scope of everyone. Another one is non-response bias. So non-response bias is when you select people, but they don't pick up the phone. So when we select people and they don't respond. So this would be like if you were selected for the tobacco survey at school and you were randomly selected in that class, but you don't show up to school that day. Well, that's non-response bias, okay? Can't talk to them, probably not going to make it up. The other one is a voluntary response bias. Okay, so this is when individuals select themselves, okay? So select. So this means like maybe they're really passionate about something, like pro-life movement or something like that, and they just decide, the people themselves decide to like go out to this event because they have a really strong opinion on a certain topic, right? And so they're going to be like, oh, I'm going to volunteer myself to respond to this survey and tell you how I feel because I'm really passionate, and I shouldn't have said, pro-life, like literally anything, like anything that somebody's really passionate about, they're going to volunteer themselves. Like it could be about puppies or something like that, and they're like, let me tell you about puppies. I got you. All right? And so all of these become problems, and they mess up samples all the time. So, and that's what I was talking about right here. It says, in both non-response and voluntary response bias, you tend to hear from people that are just on one side of the issue rather than the other. Okay, it is often those who want to change those. Yes, so this is people that want something to happen in a movement, or are overly positive or overly negative because they want their voice to be heard, right? Or they just don't care. So it just really depends for these two. That it's hard to get random samples for these. Okay, one side, when we have these problems, is overly represented compared to the other side, and so it makes for a bad sample. Okay, that's where we get this ugly sample bias. But you get my point of what would happen here. All right.